Extra Point Podcast from Arizona's family.
All right, Suns fans looking for a little maybe inspiration and insight this summer, the summer reading season. Pick up a copy of 61. You're going to want to hear from the author who joins us here on the Extra Point on Arizona's family, the one, the only Chris Paul, zooming in, the point god. And Chris, why was now the time to put your thoughts down on paper in book form of all the lessons you've learned along the way in the NBA from your grandfather?
Man, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was during the pandemic when I started this process. Basically had a lot of time to just reflect on life and things and how things were going. And I just felt like it would be an ideal time to share my story.
How did growing up working at your grandfather's service station really shape how you run a basketball team here in the NBA?
You know what? It really gave me an appreciation, right? Like, I don't know if my grandfather grew up just loving cars and wanted to be in the sun and under cars with bolts and changing oil and rotating tires, but that was his way of life, right? That's how he earned a living, and he fell in love with it. And so day in and day out, he worked. He didn't let anybody try to tell him otherwise, so he put the work in. And so for me as a kid, all I saw was my mom, my dad, and especially my granddad doing the work. And so it just taught me about the importance of community, but more so the importance of family.
How has that guided you through your basketball career, through the ups and the downs?
Oh, man. Well, I lost him when I was 17. And, it's funny, like when you have some different family members, and especially for my granddad, he wasn't always necessarily a big talker. He wasn't always saying like, this is this lesson, this is that lesson. A lot of it, he was just doing. He was just doing it, and he was sort of showing you. And so at an early age, I remember one of the first times I had to try to check someone's oil for the first time. When you open up the hood of a car, right? It can be a little bit tough, somebody trying to figure out exactly where the latch is or whatnot to lift up the hood. And on different cars, it changes. So when you go out to it, and if my granddad was like, okay, you're going to do it yourself. If he saw me having a hard time with it, he wouldn't just help me and do it. He'd make me sit there until I figured it out, right? And so those different lessons just show you how sometimes, when you help too much, you can become a crutch. And so my granddad he was always hard on us. If me and my brother wanted some shoes, even though my granddad had the money right there in his pocket, come to work, come to work. So, everything was earned, not given.
You scored 61 points the night after you lost him, and that's the title of the book. Of course, his age, 61 years of age when you did lose him. How going back to that time in your life, how much did those couple days, losing him, playing in that game, shape the man that you are today?
Tell you the truth, a lot of that stuff is a blur, right? And in writing the book, it was crazy how therapeutic it was and how it made me engage in conversation with my family, conversations that we've never had. Like I never had a conversation with my mom about where she was when she found out that my granddad had passed. But those days in between were sort of a blur. And I was questioning whether or not I was going to play anyway to begin with. And so to watch the film every now and then of seeing the game or whatnot, it's still kind of surreal to me because when I did score that 61st point, I sort of just laid there like exhausted, but just not just from the game, but from the emotions of trying to deal with his loss.
Well, and the loss, I found myself, you talk about it in the book, and really you take people to a place. I felt like I was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, with you at that game, the way you described it here with Michael Wilbon in the book. You also tell some stories about, the ups and downs of life with him and running the service station. One that kind of stuck with me was when his rival accused him of putting water in his gasoline. And I see the smile on your face. You know what I went back to on that? I went back to playing against Pat Bev and the Clippers. How much did some of those lessons learned along the way of what he even went through help you in your NBA career?
Oh, man. Listen, at that age, I didn't necessarily get a chance to see a lot of the anger from my granddad or whatever he was dealing with. Sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't. But there are many situations where you take the high road. Then in some, you just like, look, I done had enough. This is what it is. But all in all, the foundation of who he was as a man and everything, it all came back to knowing who you are at the end of the day. Knowing that people can say whatever, deal with whatever, but as long as you got that family and that support system, everything else should be what it is.
And as a dad now with your family, and you try to impart these lessons learned to your kids, especially as they get older here, how do you balance the priorities of being a dad and a professional basketball player?
The hardest thing it is, right? Because everyone's always trying to say that they're trying to, balance this or balance that, but you just never know. On this given day, you might have to pour everything into this bucket. And then on this next day, you might have to pour everything into that bucket. And I think the biggest thing, like I talk about in the book, is communication. You can trick people, you can fool people and everything. One thing you can't fool is your kids, right? So I think with my kids, I try to give them as much real time as possible, and try to give them unconditional love and support. And then basketball, like that's a big part of me too, right? So making sure that you fill those cups at the right time.
So as you go through this process here in the off season and obviously looking at your future here with the Phoenix Suns, what's the next chapter look like for you here? Is there another book to be written? Maybe even with a Suns championship parade here at the end?
Yeah, I don't know about another book, but I'm definitely I'm curious like everybody else, trying to wait and see what it is. I love being in Phoenix. I didn't plan on being anywhere else, but I understand this is a business. Decisions have to be made. So in the meantime, I'm enjoying the time with my family, working out, training, getting ready for whatever's next to come.
And Frank Vogel has been very vocal about his appreciation for you. What has that meant to you?
I appreciate it. I talked to Frank a couple times. I'm going to try to grab something to eat with him soon or something like that. But I've known Frank just from being in the league for a while now. So I appreciate him.
What did you learn from watching the Nuggets title run? And what did you take from the series as being the only team that was able to beat them twice?
What did I learn? Probably not that I ain't already know. You score the most points, you win. But I was happy for them, to tell you the truth. DeAndre Jordan, who's like a brother to me. Ish Smith, who is a Wake Forest and a North Carolina guy, and Mike Malone was my coach my last year in New Orleans. So 3 people that I'm really close to. So happy for them.
And you detail in the book your process of leaving the Clippers. You've been through, all of this before, but it's just kind of the nature of professional sports. Do you lean on Jay-Z and Bob Iger this time around, like you talk about in the book? And what are the conversations with little Chris like?
Yeah, no, not this time. But I took my daughter to the Indiana Jones premiere last night with Bob. You know what I mean? So I definitely still talk to him all the time about life and what's going on and this process. And conversations with Chris. I think that's probably the coolest part to me. And it's crazy that you just mentioned it because I didn't even think about that. So when I was going to Houston, it was sort of telling him, what we're doing and seeing his reaction. He's 14 now. He's a little man of his own. So with everything that went down and, he gets alerts to his phone like anybody else, I've been talking to him about it. Like, Chris, what you think? What, because it matters. All that matters to me because everything that I do, where I play and everything is more than just me. It affects everybody in my family.
What do you think Papa would say about everything that you've accomplished, and what would the conversations be like with your son, between your son and Papa?
Man, the one thing that I think my granddad would be most proud of, and it wouldn't be any of the NBA stuff or any of the accomplishment, he'd be more proud that my family is still intact, right? My uncles, my aunts, my cousins, like, we've had our issues in our family over all the years, but our gang is still intact. That's, I think, what he'd be the most proud of. And then I think my granddad would more so laugh at my kids because they silly. I think that's one thing that my family does more than anything is we joke, we smile, we laugh. And I really wish he would have got an opportunity to see them.
And how much does that pull on you, playing in Phoenix, maybe going back to Los Angeles, being close to your family, especially as your kids get older here?
Listen here, I'm gonna tell you this. Somebody can try to write anything about my family, being with them, whatever. We not new to this, right? My one thing about my family, and I appreciate wholeheartedly, my wife, my kids, and all that. They know how much the game means to me, right? And so wherever I am, wherever I am, everything is a decision. It's a decision. Do they come? Do they stay or whatnot? But they know how much winning basketball means to me. And so they know we'll make it work. We done did it before.
Well, winning basketball, for those of us who had to sit through the playoff drought here in Phoenix, and then you show up and the team goes to the NBA Finals, that was special. So I'm going to take a page out of Skip Prosser's playbook right here and not delay gratitude. Chris Paul, thank you for everything you've done for Valley Sports. May your family and you yourself continue to be highly favored and blessed, and we hope to see you back here at Suns Youth.
Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.